Hi everyone, this is Patricia Hill with My Bariatric Kitchen. Today I'm making a keto dinner recipe. It's feta meatballs with a Mediterranean cauliflower rice. Super easy. We're going to start with the meatballs first. So I have a tablespoon of olive oil heating on the stove. We're going to go ahead and get ready to cook our peppers. So it's red peppers and chopped onion now. So we're going to saute those for just a bit. May have to turn up the heat just a tiny bit. Get these going. And these we're going to saute just long enough until the onion is slightly transparent and the red bell peppers are softened. So approximately 5 to 6 minutes. So I'm going to leave those to start cooking right now while I step over and start working on the meatballs. Okay, so for the meatballs, I have a half and half mixture, half pound of ground pork and a half pound of ground turkey. I also have a version of this that you can do as a balanced macro recipe where we're going to use only ground turkey, and instead of almond flour that's found in this recipe, you're going to substitute the almond flour for quick oats. So same mixture, everything else is the same. So we have almond flour and flaxseed meal that we're going to add to that. We have a half cup of crumbled feta cheese that we're going to add in. We're going to add 1 egg mixed in. And now we're going to add in our seasonings. We have dried parsley, and this is 2 tablespoons of dried parsley. 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. I have giant things of these because I cook so much. All right, we have a half teaspoon of salt, and this is pink Himalayan salt, a little bit healthier for you than traditional table salt. And then black pepper, we have a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Okay, so here's our ingredients for the meatballs. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and mix this slightly just to get the egg incorporated so it's not just sitting on top of the meat. And again, while my peppers and onions are over there sauteing, I don't wanna mix it too much because we don't wanna over mix the meat. Over mixing ground meat will make it really tough. So we just want to incorporate the ingredients in just until we don't really see the egg or the egg yolk, the egg white or the egg yolk anymore. All right, so done with that. Go back over and work on the peppers and onions. And in just a minute, I'm going to add in some garlic. Now, here's the deal with garlic, guys. If the recipe calls for a teaspoon, most likely I'm going to put a tablespoon because everything's a little bit better with garlic. But this is one of those ingredients that feel free to add as much or as little as you like. I think it adds a little bit extra oomph when you add a little bit of extra garlic. It's like the ketchup of the new world. So once we do that, we have the oven preheated to 375 degrees. Now there's 2 ways that you can bake these. I'm using a stoneware pan, which has already been seasoned because I've used it for so long. If you have a regular aluminum baking sheet, you're going to want to cover that with parchment paper, and that will help to keep the meatballs from sticking to the surface, okay? All right, let's check on these. And actually, these are getting pretty close to where I want them. I don't mind a little bit of texture in mine. Just a little bit longer, and those will be ready to go. So while these are finishing up, I am going to talk for just a second about the cauliflower rice while we're waiting for that. So the cauliflower rice, there's several ways to do this. If you haven't tried cauliflower rice, you're totally missing the boat. Even if you don't love cauliflower, this is definitely something worth trying. A lot of grocery stores now, even in the fresh produce and in the frozen section, have pre-chopped cauliflower rice. I ended up making my own. When I went to the store, they didn't have any pre-chopped, although I generally buy pre-chopped because it's just so easy and convenient. So I ended up doing my own. I literally just took a small head of cauliflower, put it in my food processor, and just hit the pulse button until I ended up with like rice texture pieces. Now some of them are slightly larger, that's fine. You don't have to really worry that they're all exactly the same size. What you don't want to do though is make it where they're like so fine that they end up turning to mush. We don't want that, because you want to keep them with just a little bit of texture, almost like a texture between say like a quinoa, if you've ever had quinoa, and what an actual grain of rice would look like. And then we also have chopped spinach. I went ahead and chopped this ahead of time, so we had that ready. We have shallots, lemon. This is lemon zest. We also have our chicken broth, and then I'm going to pull back in some of the spices when we get ready to make the cauliflower rice. So the cauliflower rice will go into the skillet when I put the meatballs into the oven, and so they'll both be finished at approximately the same time when we're done. Let me rinse off real quick. Okay, all right, back to our meatballs, because these are getting pretty close to being done. Yep, this is just about the texture that I want. It's starting to slightly brown just a little bit in places. And so I'm gonna go ahead and add again, I add extra, so, because it looks amazing. So, now garlic does burn fast. So be really careful with your garlic. You only want to cook it for about a minute. Immediately you'll get the fragrance from it. It's going to be very aromatic. And then once you've got it incorporated in, you want to keep stirring it. You don't want to let it sit for too long because it will burn really fast. But go ahead and get that stirred in again for about a minute. And then as soon as this is done, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this into my bowl that I have my peppers and onions in, because I want it to cool slightly. So I'm going to walk over and got my little bowl. So I'm putting it back in there just to let it cool a little bit. Turn that off. Okay. Now you can stick this in the fridge and let it cool a little bit at this point, or you can just kind of lightly blow and keep moving it around just to take some of the heat off, because again, you don't want to put it in too hot because you're getting ready to roll meatballs. So we don't want this entirely too hot. We also don't want to melt the cheese too fast or start cooking the egg before we put it in the oven. So it'll cool down pretty quick, especially if you put it in a cooler bowl. Some people suggest putting it on a plate, sticking it in the oven. If you make it ahead, you can actually let it cool completely, depending on how you decide to do your meal prep. But if you're kind of in a hurry, like I am for the demo, just to get this done for you guys, then just stirring and lightly blowing or fanning or sticking in the fridge will work, okay? All right, it's still a little bit warm, but it's okay. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's not still sizzling from the stove. All right, so once I have that, I'm gonna go ahead and mix that in. Now, because the meat and everything in here is cold, it will chill down those peppers and onions really quickly. And again, I'm just kind of mashing it around just enough to stir it in so that it's incorporated in. Okay. All right, once I have that done, we're gonna roll the meatballs into approximately 30 balls. Now, I am making mine just slightly larger. I'm on maintenance, okay? So I've been at this for 5 years. So my weight loss happened in 13 months. So my portion sizes are just slightly larger now that I'm 5 years post-op. And so I'm doing a little bit larger meatballs. So the size of the meatballs really isn't as important as the actual portions that you break it into. So with the 30 meatballs that the recipe calls for, you're gonna end up with 6 servings, so 5 little meatballs. With these, the meatballs are gonna be a little bit larger and obviously gonna cook just a little bit longer, okay? So you're gonna have to adjust your cooking time. Feel free to play around with it. Again, I like the meatballs just a little bit bigger, but you can make them as large or as small as you like. You really don't want to make them much larger than this though, because then they tend to burn on the outside and don't get done on the inside. And we're back. Our meatballs are ready. Remember, I made these slightly larger because my portions are a little bit different and I like the meatballs a little larger, which means we're gonna have to bake them a little bit longer. If you make them into 30, these are gonna bake for approximately 20 minutes. These are gonna bake more like 25 to 28 minutes. We'll just check them at 25. Okay, now we're ready to start our cauliflower rice. So with the cauliflower rice, again, this is a really easy recipe. We're gonna cook these on the stovetop in a skillet, and it'll be ready about the same time that the meatballs are done, but the good thing is that it can sit and rest while we're waiting on the meatballs. Okay, now to make the Mediterranean cauliflower rice. We're gonna start with 2 tablespoons of oil in our pan. We're gonna bring that up to medium-high heat, and then we're going to saute our shallots. I'm gonna leave my lemon there because it's gonna fall off. Our shallots and our garlic. So, let me get that going. And again, extra garlic. The shallots and the garlic will cook relatively quickly. Shallots are just a softer, milder onion, and so they will cook pretty fast. We're only going to saute these for about a minute, maybe 2, just until they start to soften, and then we will add in the cauliflower rice. So once we get these going, now they're sizzling. Took it just a second. Now they'll continue to cook with the cauliflower rice, so we don't have to cook them a lot. We just want to get them started. Okay, our shallots and garlic are ready to go. They're at a good place. We're going to go ahead and add our cauliflower rice in. And this is 4 cups of riced cauliflower. Alright, so we're going to saute this for 3 to 5 minutes. You want to start to see little bits of brown on the cauliflower, so it's okay to let it brown a little bit. That's going to add a nutty flavor to your cauliflower. And like I said earlier, that the shallots and garlic will continue cooking a little bit. Those will also start to brown a little bit. That adds a depth to the dish. You want to keep your temperature at medium-high, so you want to hear it sizzle just a little bit while you're cooking. And you want to give it a stir every couple minutes or every few seconds. You don't have to stand and watch over it the whole time, but you do want to make sure that you're keeping things moving around in the pan. If it begins to stick a little bit, it shouldn't, but if it begins to stick a little bit, you can always add just an extra small drizzle of olive oil or a little bit of chicken stock. We are going to use chicken stock again in the recipe later to continue cooking this when we get ready to finish up the recipe. But for right now, all we're really wanting to do is start the cooking process and get things browning just a little bit. Again, we want to add that kind of nutty flavor to it. So let's cook this for 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll be ready to finish the recipe. Okay, our cauliflower is ready. There are nice little bits of brown sprinkled throughout. We're going to add in our spinach at this point, and the beauty of spinach is it does wilt pretty darn quickly. So it's only going to take a little bit for us to stir this in and let it render down. You can leave it slightly leafy if you want. I do like to take it down just a little bit more. But you're going to want to incorporate it into your cauliflower so that the heat from what's already existing in the pan is going to help to wilt the spinach. So, that done. Once we get this done, and it's almost ready, see how fast that works? It goes super fast. So we've got that done. And at this point, we're going to add in the rest of our ingredients, which is a 1/4 cup of chicken broth, a tablespoon of lemon juice. We've got a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Oops, I don't want that chunk. Don't want the chunk. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We have a 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano. Feel free to add a little bit more if you like a little bit more flavor in this. And then we have oops, can't get the lid on. Pepper, we're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon. And then one of the things that helps to add into that Mediterranean lemon flavor is we have some lemon zest. And so we have about a tablespoon of lemon zest. So that's just grated off the outside of the lemon. We're going to mix mix this in, making sure that we incorporate the lemon throughout. Then we're going to turn it down, turn the temperature down, cover the pan and let it cook for approximately 10 minutes to fully soften. Everything gets absorbed, everything goes through and is fully flavored. The rice gets cooked through and we're done. So we're going to turn it down to low. Get all the lemon zest mixed throughout. You don't want a bite of lemon zest. You want it mixed all in. If it starts to stick, feel free to add just a little bit more chicken broth and then just incorporate that in. It will eventually absorb it out. So we're going to let this cook for about 10 to 12 minutes, just barely steaming, covered. And then by the time this is finished, our meatballs will be just about ready to come out of the oven and dinner will be ready. Okay, everything is ready. Our cauliflower rice is completely finished. I did not have to add any additional chicken broth. I just stirred it every couple minutes just to make sure it was okay. However, I do like just a little bit of extra lemon juice, and so I typically do squeeze just a little bit more in before I serve it, just a tad, which is exactly what you want to do if you like it a little zestier. And then this is good to go. We're going to grab the meatballs next. Turn that off. Now remember, my meatballs were a little bit larger, so I had to cook them a little bit longer. All right. Okay, so our meatballs are done. They are perfectly cooked through and ready to go. Super delicious with our cauliflower rice. Dinner is served. Thanks for watching, guys.